welcome exiles to my bow, lightning arrow, StormRain Slayer. Now this character is my attempt at a bow build. I say attempt because I've done maybe 5 or 6 bow characters throughout my time playing Path of Exile, which have all failed miserably. They've all been not very good. And this is my attempt at making a good one. And I kind of, not gonna lie, I'm cheesing it a little bit. I'm trying to carry myself with overpowered things like Omniscience and putting about 100x into self-crafting my gear. I don't feel I'm good enough to make a bow build that works without investing something into it because of my previous experiences. So I went for something that overpowered like Crystallized Omniscience, and I went for some heavier investment. But we still managed to do some cool things. Things I'm excited about with this character are... Now don't look at these resistances right now. Okay, now you can look. 90 max all res and 100% spell suppression. This combination of defenses, I think, just feels so clean. Basically, it allows us to pretty much ignore most spell hits, or if we do get hit by them, we take very little damage. And then on top of that, we also have 60,000 armor. This means whenever we press our Molten Shell, we're looking at a 10k EHP threshold or shield. This allows us to tank most one-shots, and whenever we get in a dicey situation, we can pop it on, and all of a sudden, we're tanking a whole lot more damage than we would before. Obviously, I'm obsessed with defenses. I like to see what I can squeeze in for as little investment as possible. So in this build, the 90 max all res, of course, is coming from my favorite jewel, Melding of the Flesh. I'm going to keep tweaking and working ways of how to fit this into basically any build and every build, as with basically little amount of investment as possible. And my solution for this character has been 1, a Balbala jewel. I am falling in love with the Trader Keystone. This jewel, or this passive, with just 1 empty slot, allows us for close to permanent uptime on a bismuth flask. This is a very small investment which basically completely counteracts the downside of the Melding of the Flesh minus 70 to 80 res, which means it's a whole lot easier to fit into builds. That on top of that, it allows us to have pretty good uptime on 3 other flasks, so we can say reliably have 65% curse reduction, reliably have some crit chance and attack speed, and then maybe while we're waiting for a boss to come down from the sky, Cirrus, we get our flash charges back to have a really uber effect Bottle of the Faith and deal out some heavy damage. Anyways, that's one of my favorite inclusions to the build. I'm starting to really fall in love with the Brutal Restraints plus Balbala. There's other good stats you can get on there, like movement speed, like attack and cast speed, dexterity. Gain Physics Extra isn't really good for my build, but it's still a good stat. We have increased aura effect. We actually got it on 2 notables here, which allowed me to hit a threshold of aura effect I wasn't expecting to, and I was planning to grab Survivalist for +1 max all res, but I no longer needed it, so I ended up just grabbing Aspect of the Links, a little bit of damage nodes here. Maybe not the best pathing, but it still allowed us to hit a threshold of aura effect where we could hit that 90 max all res. I'm getting max res from aura effect from Purity of Ice. I'm getting 3 from my chest, 2 from my gloves, and then 2 from Winter Prowler. In this build, I was building around Arn's Anguish, Slayer, and Gluttonous Tide originally. Gluttonous Tide was the thing that got me planning a bow build. I thought this thing looked so cool. Shooting all those additional arrows would be a lot of fun. Unfortunately, my small brain forgot to look at the damage numbers. And the damage numbers of Gluttonous Tide are they're really bad. You're looking at 90 to 359 without quality or whatever. When you have a good roll on this bow, best case scenario, you're dealing like 400 PDPS. All you have to do, swap in an okay rare bow with like 1000 EDPS, and you're dealing 2.5 times the damage without considering the additional arrows. That's a bad thing, and this is something I think is becoming more and more the case for basically all unique weapons, is they're just so insanely outclassed by rares, it's not even funny. It's never going to be worth it to go with a unique item typically for the weapon slots, unless they have some unique scaling, like Brutus Lead Sprinkler on a Strength Stacker or something like that, if you can't afford Alberons, that is. So, moral of the story is, the damage is bad. Not only that, but it also has some feels bad elements. What would happen is, say you stack up to 7 Frenzy Charges, it will charge your next attack to shoot 7 additional arrows. Well, then it will delete all your Frenzy Charges, and if you stack up to 7 again, it doesn't take into account the fact you have 7 arrows ready to go. It'll still delete your Frenzy Charges with no additional benefit. What this means is, the frenzy charge uptime ends up being, at best, you have on average 3.5 frenzy charges, or 50% of the frenzy charges you would have on average. And it feels really bad to lose the damage from frenzy charges. And usually, if you stack up to the frenzy charges to get the bow attack for the additional arrows, the next attack, when you're firing with those additional arrows, you have almost no frenzy charges. So, it has these really feels bad elements where you're not really getting the benefit of frenzy charges. And then on top of that, it deals bad damage, and it just gets outclassed by a bow where you don't even have additional arrows, but it doesn't even matter, and you're still dealing more damage. So, point is, I had a double corrupted onslaught, flat fizz, gluttonous tide that was really cool, and I swapped it out for an average bow that I picked up for the fracture for like 4x or something, and I threw a couple essences till I hit like T2 of one of the mods. I threw a Veiled Chaos at it, and I just crafted attack speed, and I said that's good enough. And this was already 2 to 3 times the damage of Gluttonous Tide, even though it's not even a very good bow. So, moral of the story is there, I wanted to do Gluttonous Tide, and it just didn't pan out, unfortunately, and that's my own fault for not looking at the numbers on Gluttonous Tide. It's just not a very good bow. Other things I had a lot of fun with this character outside of playing it was just crafting rare gear. You'll see a lot of this rare gear is all very, I guess, custom made for me playing as Omniscience and for playing as an attack-based build. I had a lot of fun crafting it, and I think I will be making a second video on this character where I'll have a POB that goes over the crafting of this gear. But when I say second video, it's not going to be a Slayer. Hear me out. I might be taking a dip into the shallow end of the pool where the meta players are. I might be playing a Deadeye because I've been thinking about it. The additional proj, the tailwind, all that sort of stuff is going to ultimately be just strictly a lot better damage-wise than Slayer was here. And I think you could really do this build a proper min-maxing, because I've made this gear, I've made a good character. The baseline, the skeleton of it is good, but I made a crucial mistake in my Ascendancy choice. I've decided leech really just isn't that good these days. It feels really bad when enemies are attacking you, like Cirrus in the clouds, and you can't fight back. It feels really bad in terms of it's just not that good of life per second compared to like life gain on hit. One Vitality Watcher's Eye mod, and all of a sudden I have infinitely better sustain. This, for Ascendancy points, it's like, I want to like it for the damage reduction, I want to like it for the attack speed, the cannot be stunned, and the unaffected by bleeding, but ultimately, it just falls short for me. Then, next up, the overwhelm, the base crit's nice, but ultimately, I can outclass this by A, just crafting a better bow with a little bit of crit chance, or B, just grabbing Secrets of Suffering and getting 15 base crit for free. The options are there, so ultimately, this stuff just doesn't really pack the punch it needs to. I think Masterful Form is pretty great, and maybe I could swap to some other nodes like Headsman and Bane of Legends, but I just think, ultimately, Deadeye is going to be better in quite a few ways, so I am going to use my previously leveled RF, Righteous Fire character, and I'm going to respec him for this build specifically, because I want to give this build a proper min-maxing, a proper test to see if, hey, can we convince some Omniscience Tornado Shot meta boys to actually add some defenses in their build? That's going to be the goal of the character, is to be good enough where the characters, where the guys that die 6 times a map look at it and go, yeah, that DPS is good enough. I would rather have that DPS and not die every map than having just a little bit more DPS. By a little bit more, it's probably going to be 2-3 times more, whatever it is. We'll see if we can get some Giga DPS into this build with our 100x investment and swapping the Ascendancy. I'm hopeful. I really am. And that'll be the next video. Hopefully you guys look forward to it. One other thing I think I forgot to mention is, I don't know if I mentioned that we had 60k armor, but I'm getting this through Iron Reflexes combined with Grace and Determination and Defiance banner. I think this is a pretty cool combination to get a really hefty Molten Shell into the build, which allows us to have that 10k shield. Pretty much allows you to sit and tank most one-shots in the game. Just kind of a, I get to do this. I like doing that in builds where I get a tanky option to be able to ignore some mechanics. Even though there may be easy to dodge mechanics, I would rather stand in them and tank them. So, hopefully that gives a good overview of basically the building blocks and the plan I had for this character. Next time you see this video, or next video on this basically build type, I am going to do it with a Deadeye. I am going to swap some passives around. I think it's going to be infinitely better in a lot of ways, and I'm probably going to try out just a little bit of Tornado Shot. Okay, I mean, it just seems like it's a better skill. StormRain has a few problems. Delayed damage. If the enemy moves, all the damage you just shot there doesn't get hit. Stuff like that where it feels bad. I'm going to give the other thing some try, and we'll see how it goes. Anyways, as always, Exiles, thank you for watching. Take care.